I thought it was
1 second.
I know the mom has one.
The mom always has one.
She's ready and reeling for boogers.
I ain't got time to have hands.
Y'all think I'm gonna be wiping boogers for the rest of my life? Y'all got me. I can't do it. Poop boogers? What? Oh my god. Where's my phone? Wait, I stayed.
Taylor said, Elizabeth Taylor said
Sorry. I just gotta hurry. No, it wasn't. It was not.
Welcome back. Hola.
She said
Bonjour, thank you. Somebody help me a little bit of French. Everybody doing well, hopefully? Yes. So I did not go to Florida this weekend. What the heck?
Wow. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
Of course.
Okay.
Boring till the end.
Terrible.
Boring till the end. How do you all feel about, first of all, I am a Maroon 5 fan, so don't be too critical. People either loved or hated Adam taking his shirt off.
Lord.
Oh,
Singer for Maroon.
He's joking, right?
I thought you meant him.
Maroon 5 and I are so cool. We're on a first name basis. Yeah, just like Adam, you know? Just like the guy. So I like that they did some of their older songs, which are their hits, but it also reminded me they really haven't had as successful album as that first one that made lots of people fall in love with
He's
them.
too busy playing with Blake Shelton on The Voice.
Oh, with Blake, yeah, that's true. He's on The Voice a lot. And he's got his new little model wife, so.
Well, and you have a bunch of kids too, like.
Yeah, but a lot of people have families. They're still doing their careers. But I always loved the halftime shows. I intentionally get on Twitter just to see what people are saying, and they had me laughing so hard. They thought the transitions from one artist to another was kind of awkward. So I'm like, and I felt kind of dumb. I wasn't really at a party. I just kind of did a drive-by during halftime somewhere, and then I came back at a friend's house, and so but they were saying that, they're like, oh, that's Big Boy, and I didn't even recognize him. I was like, I don't know who that is. I still didn't know what Travis Scott looks like. I just know his association with the Kardashians. But I was like, who's that? They're like, that's Travis Scott. I'm like, okay, that's what he looks like. I don't know. Does he have like a bunch of hits? Like, why was he on there?
Travis Scott?
Random. Yes. He's got like one hit wonder, right?
No.
That and
He's got a couple songs. He got one with Drake, but I don't know. He might have been the only black artist that
willingness to perform at the Super Bowl. All right. That's great. He gets a consolation prize. Nevertheless, my poor husband is now officially depressed because there's no more sports on except for golf.
Haha, yes.
I mean, there's no more football. He's like, I was like, you'll survive.
I thought you were going to survive the Patriots won.
Oh, well, that too. But
Yeah, I think we're all happy with that, but
there might be some Patriot fans in here. So for the Patriot fans that are in here, congrats. Team player. So let's get started. We're doing really well because we're like this close to getting out of personal jurisdiction, which is exciting. Like, this is the hardest part of the whole semester, so we're happy. So I wanted to just touch bases before we transition into general jurisdiction to talk about specific jurisdiction one more time to make sure that you all kind of see the road to travel. So a quick recap of specific jurisdiction is, again, the first prong of the three-part jurisdictional test is that the plaintiff's claim must arise out of the defendant's contacts with the state. So we know that's one of the important things to establish with specific jurisdiction. Again, that the plaintiff's claim must arise out of the defendant's contacts with the state. And remember, we got that black letter law from the McGee case and the international shoot. So remember, the cause of action essentially arises out of the non-resident defendant's contacts with the state. It's another way you could say it. Next thing we ask is, we ask is whether the non-resident defendant has minimum contacts with the state. So are there minimum contacts? Is the next thing you're going to ask yourself. And who remembers what we look for to determine whether or not there's minimum contacts? What are some of the buzzwords? Yes, thank you.
Systematic and continuous.
Yep, we look at whether or not they're systematic and continuous. What else? Yes.
Purposeful availment.
Excellent. Purposeful availment. Any more? Yes, sir.
Fairness?
Fairness? No, kind of. Next prong. Any other ones? Yes, you haven't spoken this semester.
Like the relatedness.
Yep, the relatedness, okay, of the contact to the state. Yes.
Foreseeability.
Oh, you're on a roll. Foreseeability. All right. See how many added? Look at this. So let's make sure we have the complete list. So determine minimum contacts. We're going to look at the extent, as someone said, of the level of contacts with the state. The second thing we're going to look at is that the defendant's contacts with the state must be continuous and systematic. Remember, isolated contacts are not enough. So it must be systematic and continuous. Isolated contacts not enough. We also know that there can't be any unilateral activity, which no one said that, and that was from the Hansen case. So it can't be a unilateral activity. Next, you look at whether there's purposeful availment, which you did get. So it can't be no unilateral activity. You're looking to see whether there's purposeful availment. And then foreseeability, thank you, in the back. Whether there's foreseeability, and that was from the worldwide Volkswagen case. How cool, these cases are like a puzzle. I like it. I know you don't, but I do. All right, so what about then the Burger King and Pavlovich case, right? And the Nicastro case. How should you think about those cases collectively? Again, the Burger King, Pavlovich, and the Nicastro case. And so really what they are is an example of the application of the minimum contacts test in a contract setting, which would be the Burger King case. The court will look at the defendant's contacts, as you might remember, with the state during contract negotiations. As you remember with the Burger King plaintiffs, defendants, the terms of the contract, and they'll look at the actions that the defendant took while performing the contract in the state. So again, the reminder from the Burger King case is an example of how you apply the minimum contacts test in a contract setting. And what you look at to establish or determine whether there are minimum contacts is you look at the defendant's contact with that particular state where they're trying to bring the suit during negotiations. So the defendant's contact with the state during negotiations. The terms of the contract. You look at the terms of the contract. So again, looking at the defendant's contacts with the state during negotiations. You're looking at the terms of the contract, sorry about that. And the actions taken by the defendant while performing the contract in the state. The Pavlovich case was important because that is an example of applying the minimum contacts test in an internet setting. And they gave us that three-part sliding scale. So again, applying a minimum contacts in an internet setting. And then lastly, good old Nicastro, which is a split decision, as we all remember, in the sense of why they came to the conclusion they did, is an example of applying minimum contacts in a stream of commerce setting. Let's be honest, this is awesome. This is very clear. We like this. We can memorize this. We can apply this right now in a law firm. Totally, you can do it. That excites me. Alrighty. And then the last prong of the analysis in terms of specific jurisdiction is what Dimitri said, which is fairness. Is the exercise of jurisdiction fair and reasonable given the defendant's contacts? Okay, is it fair and reasonable given the defendant's contacts? So the last prong, again, for a specific jurisdiction analysis is whether the exercise of jurisdiction would be reasonable or fair given the defendant's contacts. Reasonable or fair given the defendant's contacts. got those 5 fairness factors that we use to evaluate or answer that question, again from the worldwide Volkswagen case. 1, the burden on the defendant, and I'm going to race through this because you can get it out of your book. 2, the state's interest in adjudicating the dispute. 3rd, the plaintiff's interest in obtaining convenient and effective relief. 4th, the interstate judicial system's interest in the most efficient resolution of the litigation. And lastly, the shared interest of states in furthering fundamental substantive social policies. All of those are in the Volkswagen case. You all should be able to pull them out up there in your notes. So that was just an effort to kind of help you see why we read what we read and how the puzzle pieces fit together. All right? Okay. So now we're going to be moving on to our discussion of general jurisdiction cases. Okay? All these cases we've discussed thus far have been specific jurisdiction cases. The test for general jurisdiction is whether or not the defendant has substantial, not minimum, but substantial contacts with the state. So it's kind of a set kind of black letter rule that if the defendant is incorporated in that state or has their principal place of business in that state, those are considered enough contacts to establish general jurisdiction. So again, the test for general jurisdiction is whether or not a non-resident, well, whether a defendant has substantial contacts with the state. And again, it's kind of a unspoken rule that if they have, where they're incorporated and where their principal place of business is, they have sufficient contacts to establish general jurisdiction. All right. So initially what you do as an attorney, when you sit down with your client, you get the facts, they tell you kind of where they want to file the suit and why. My brother lives in Texas, so I have a free place to stay during the lawsuit, whatever the reason is. But the first thing you try to determine is whether they have general jurisdiction. If there's not general jurisdiction in the state where they want to bring the defendant to defend themselves, then you see if there's specific jurisdiction. But you always start out with the big, I don't know what to call it, the biggest jurisdictional category. So first she's like, is there general jurisdiction? Is there specific jurisdiction? Yes to either of those, you can file the suit in that case. The case in that state. All right, so let's start out with our first general jurisdiction case. We have 2 attorneys today. These are pretty easy cases. Attorney Belanki, where art thou? Hello. And then Attorney Jarnigan, where are you? All right, in the corner, sorry, I didn't see you. So, either of you give me the facts, please. Thank you.
2 13-year-old boys from North Carolina died in Paris from a bus accident. Boys' parents sued in North Carolina, claiming the accident occurred due to a defective tire manufactured in Turkey. And they sued 2 defendants, Goodyear USA, an Ohio corporation, and 3 of its subsidiaries organized and operating in Turkey, France, and Luxembourg.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So I'm just going to say it a little bit louder, but he's going on with the facts. I always pick the pen that doesn't work. Yeah. All right, so we have a bus accident in Paris. Who's been to Paris? Oh, a lot of you. I love it there. Oh, can I just tell y'all a quick Paris story? It's actually really good. So my husband and I were in Paris, and we got caught up. It was a holiday time, so not this past November, but the one before. So I got all sucked in because I'm big on holidays in this little fair they had, and he kept saying, we're gonna miss our train back to Zurich. What are you doing? Freaking come on, right? So, we're literally running, trying to catch this train. We get on, I'm the frugal one, so he wanted to take a taxi to the train station. I'm like, no way, it's gonna cost X number of dollars, let's take the subway. And I should have listened to him, but he's like, fine. So we get on the subway, it goes like one stop, and then it stops in the middle of 2 stations. And we're all crowded in there, it's like rush hour time, and the clock's ticking, and it's the last train out. We're just like freaking out, because we're like, we gotta get back and catch a flight out of Zurich that next morning. And so I'm like asking people, I'm like, does this happen a lot? Like, should we stay? Or is this typically going to be a long time. And I'm like, excuse me, and nobody would talk to me, right? And I was just like, are you seriously kidding me? And I'm like, please. So finally I said, honey, I'm getting ready to totally embarrass us. He's like, do whatever you have to do. We need to know whether we should get off this train or try to get a taxi, because part of the concern with me too is that it was so much, like after work traffic, that it was quicker to take the subway. And so finally I said, okay, none of you guys will talk to me. I was like, fine. And he's like, and I said, bonjour! Screamed to the top of my lungs. I was like, I don't speak any more French, but damn it, I need help. So they, like, a couple people laughed. They're like, yeah, you should get off the train. They're like, we're going to be here for a while. And I'm like, why didn't you just say that when I was speaking?
Because they're Parisian.
Yeah, and I was just like, really? I said, thank you. But I'm like, Mike. So, and he was like, good job. So we're high-fiving. We get off the train or whatever. We hop in a taxi, and he's like, I'll pay you double if you speed, right? So the guy's like, cool. So he's like doing, trying to get there. We get to the train station. The guy is like literally closing the door. We're running down the platform, and I'm thinking, I know I'm gonna fall. I did it, but I was like, I know I'm gonna fall. And so we run, and we're like, please don't close that up. So we get on the train. What happens hours later? The freaking bombings where they shut down Paris. So we would have been stuck for a couple of days. Which would have been bad. And the sad part, don't judge me, okay, when I say this. Do not judge me. But while I was there, my brother passed away. And I was there as a, they picked like 25 emerging, Americans, like young scholars, to come to Zurich. And so he passed away the day we were supposed to go to Paris. And, I was like, I'm coming home. My dad's like, your flight leaves in a day anyway, just wait. And my husband had never been to Paris, so we went to Paris anyway. But the point is that's why it was so important for us to get back to get that flight, because I didn't want to miss my brother's funeral. And so we had no idea the bombings, like we would have been stuck for a couple of days, and it would have been very bad. And we were in that area, and I knew something wasn't right, because I've been to Paris before, and sure, they have like, their police officers carry guns, yeah, whatever. But like in the Louvre area and some of the touristy areas, there was like an increased police presence. It was like an army there. So they were on notice. They just didn't know where it was going to happen, because they had those AK-47s, and I actually felt uncomfortable. I'm like, there's never that many police officers around. Like, what's going on? So that's my Paris story. Pretty exciting though, huh? Yeah, and it was exciting. But yeah, bonjour. All right, so bus accident. We weren't on this bus. In Paris, kills 2 13-year-old boys from North Carolina. The boys sued North Carolina, which makes sense, state court, and they claimed that the accident was due to a defective tire, as attorney Belanki said, manufactured in Turkey in a plant of a foreign subsidiary, Goodyear. Okay, so they sued Goodyear, USA, Ohio, and some of its subsidiaries, which were located in Turkey, France, and Luxembourg. All right, so Attorney Jarnigan. Did I say your name right? Let's see. Jarnigan, yes, I did. All right, so we've got Mercedes-Benz USA.
Wait.
No?
Wrong case.
Not right.
Are we not there yet? Oh, that's a Dahmer case. You're right. I love that case. I love it. I'm going to tell you why. It's a drama case. We're going to have a great debate about that. So I jumped the gun on that. So let's back up. Did Goodyear contest personal jurisdiction in this case?
Well, the U.S., the Goodyear U.S. didn't, but the subsidiaries did.
All right. And why didn't they contest the jurisdiction in North Carolina, Goodyear? You know the obvious reason. Why don't they mind being in North Carolina?
Because they're incorporated in the U.S.
Ooh, they're having a party out there. Just walking by. So, yeah, they're incorporated in the U.S. Do they have any specific contacts to New Jersey?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Wow, it's going to be one of those days. Sorry. North Carolina.
They have plants in North Carolina.
Yeah, excellent. So they don't mind having jurisdiction in North Carolina because they have plants there. So it's not a big deal. So then, if they didn't protest personal jurisdiction in North Carolina, who did?
Their subsidiaries, the foreign subsidiaries.
Excellent. All right. So there are 3 subsidiaries that were in Turkey, France, in Luxembourg, right? All right, so the issue in this case is whether a foreign subsidiary, which just means they're a parent company, so they're either partially owned or fully owned by a bigger entity, okay, when I say subsidiary. So whether a foreign subsidiary of a U.S. corporation can be subject to personal jurisdiction in North Carolina on claims which are not related to the subsidiary's activities in the state of North Carolina. So again, what we're trying to determine here is whether a foreign subsidiary of a U.S. corporation can be subject to general personal jurisdiction in North Carolina on claims which are not related to the subsidiary's activities in the state of North Carolina. Elizabeth, you never looked that bored.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just teasing you. I was like, she looks so bored today. You stare at the people that are in the front. All right, so if you're counsel, Attorney Belanki, and by the way, I love your last name. I've never seen it before, and I think it's awesome. It's kind of like Beyonce named her mom named her maiden name, like Belanki is like a cool guy name, like not a last, I mean, it's still a cool last name, but I like it, it's cool. All right, so I may borrow it one day. So Belanki, Attorney Belanki, if you're the counsel for the subsidiaries, what's your argument as why there should not be personal jurisdiction, not in New Jersey, but in North Carolina?
There's no specific jurisdiction?
Why?